As beef producers know all too well, decisions made in Washington, D.C. can have a huge impact on our business. That includes federal regulations that often dictate what you can and can't do. Joining us now to share some insight on this important topic is Kaitlynn Glover, who was recently named Executive Director of the Public Lands Council. Kaitlynn, tell us just a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I'm excited to be joining the Washington office at NCBA and PLC. Most recently, I was in the office of Senator John Barrasso from Wyoming, where I was his policy advisor for agriculture, natural resources, and Native American issues.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's a great fit. I'm very familiar with the issues, familiar with the producers, and really excited to be joining the office.
So how will that experience working for the senator help you in this new role as Executive Director of PLC?
Well, as a policy advisor, my job was to take a variety of priorities from a variety of groups and synthesize those down into a single recommendation for him. And that's much like my job here, to take the wide array of opinions from across the country for a fairly narrow set of issues, right? Federal lands are mostly on the western part of the United States. And to synthesize that down into a single policy platform, single mode of action for producers across the country.
So I'm curious, as you take the leadership reins, what are your top priorities?
Sure. Well, look, this is a producer-driven organization. So I serve at the pleasure of our producers. Their priorities are my priorities. I'm very lucky to have a set policy book from which to have a foundation so that we are prepared for any issue moving forward. Obviously, there are a number of issues that have arisen over the last few weeks, but making sure that we have consistency for environmental permitting, access, and all of the other issues that are key to that federal land portfolio, that's where my priority lies.
You mentioned that most public land issues revolve around the western United States, but this is not just an issue that ranchers in the western United States should be concerned of. Why is that?
So look, for me, it comes down to two issues, right? To volume and then an issue set. From a volume perspective, a significant portion of cattle in this country spend some time on federal lands.
Sure.
That figure is even higher when you look at sheep producers. When we're in Washington, it's nice to have friends, and so when you work not necessarily always across the aisle, but across the industries to have a consistent policy platform, that's incredibly helpful. That helps from a national perspective. And then from an issue perspective, we're seeing a lot of these federal regulatory burdens that used to just be a Western problem encroaching across the U.S. and they're hitting the East Coast. Sure. Producers are now dealing more frequently with the Endangered Species Act, right, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and a number of others where our Western producers have a really great level of experience and history of experience to lend to their fellow producers.
Certainly have achieved some great things in Washington, D.C. You mentioned endangered species. That's been a win. But I'm curious, as you think about the next 12 months, what are some of the key priorities in 2020 as it relates to Public Lands Council? Sure.
Well, I'm very lucky to be stepping into this position a week on the job, and we have some once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation opportunities. The administration has announced proposed changes to the National Environmental Policy Act, which, if those are finalized and those are defended ultimately in court, that would change the framework and make things much better for our producers. The BLM has also announced a scoping process for grazing regulations where we're exploring opportunities to make that permitting process better. So of course those are top of mind, but as we look to the next 12 months, a lot of other issues are going to emerge. In the Endangered Species Act, what we do with these migratory birds, water issues, of course, some big wins there. I expect we'll continue working on all of these issues.
As an organization or an industry that depends so much on natural resources and federal lands, I can't think of a more important role or responsibility. Thank you for joining this organization. We look forward to having you on the show many times in the future.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, and thanks so much.
Thank you. Now, for more information on the issues that impact federal lands and the ranchers that graze there, be sure to visit the website publiclandscouncil.org.